Hi, everyone. Welcome. We are going to give people a minute to join. While we wait, feel free to drop your name and where you're coming from in the chat. I'm Nicole, and I'm in New York City. Hi, Kristen. Welcome. Hi, Lori. Hi, Daniel. Hi, everyone. For those just joining in, we're giving people a minute to join. While we wait, feel free to drop your name and where you're coming from in the chat. We'll start in 2 minutes. Loving how international our attendees are. See the Philippines, Australia, UK. Welcome, everyone. We're going to get started in 1 minute. Okay, great. Okay, great. Let's get started. Welcome, everyone. Hello to those who have just joined. My name is Nicole Barrantes, and I am with World Animal Protection. We have an exciting webinar for you all today, how responsible tourism can save wildlife. Before we move on to the presentation, we have a fun poll to ask everyone. Since we're talking about animals and tourism, we were curious to know what animal you would all like to see on vacation. So I'm going to launch the poll right now. It's pop-up box should have appeared. So go ahead and choose which animal you'd all like to see on vacation. And please note, this is all responsibly. So no riding these animals, no feeding these animals. Responsible wildlife watching. So I'll give a couple seconds for people to put in their response. We're starting to have a clear winner, but spoiler, so far no one has chosen snakes. Oh, maybe I shouldn't have said that because now someone's going to choose. No option for whales, sorry, but we have dolphin in there. There's too many animals, so we had to restrict a moment. But whales is a great choice. Okay, just give it another 10 seconds for people to put in their response. Okay, great. So, end poll, share the results. Not surprising, elephants is our #1 choice. And there's ties for lion, koala, and grizzly bear. So this very interesting results. And sorry, no one chose snakes. So now Gonna have to get some snake people to come on this webinar. But okay, great. Let's move on. Thanks everyone, that was fun. Let me stop sharing. Next slide, please. So here are our speakers. In today's event, we are going to go over 3 different ways you all, the public, can help animals through travel. I will be speaking for World Animal Protection, and we have 2 wonderful speakers with us today. We have Susanne Etti from Intrepid Travel, the world's largest adventure travel company. And we also have Kelley Louise from Impact Travel Alliance, the world's largest community of socially and eco-conscious travelers. And we'll end the webinar with Q&A. Next slide. So quickly, for those unfamiliar with World Animal Protection, hello. We are a global animal welfare nonprofit organization with offices in 12 countries around the world. Our work focuses on animals in farming and animals used in entertainment and as pets. Next slide. Our mission is to move the world to protect animals. And our vision is a world where animals live free from suffering. So my name is Nicole Barrantes, and I am a wildlife campaign manager at World Animal Protection. In my role, I work to end captive wildlife entertainment through public education, corporate engagement, and promotion of responsible and sustainable alternatives. Today, I will be going through the results of our latest Tracking the Travel Industry report and how you can use those results to protect animals in tourism. Next slide. So what is Tracking the Travel Industry? So this report, done exclusively by World Animal Protection, ranks the world's largest travel companies on their animal welfare policies. Some notable companies include Airbnb, Expedia, and Booking.com. Companies were scored based on their commitments to animal welfare, their targets and performances, their contributions to changing industry supply and consumer demand. All companies were assessed across 4 key areas and given a final score out of 100. So what does this mean exactly? Next slide, please. So these are the 4 key areas, and I'll go over each briefly. So the first key area is a company's commitment. Did the company have an animal welfare policy, and did it outline which animal-related activities are acceptable or unacceptable? So for example, does the company's policy highlight elephant rides as a no-go, like they don't sell those on their website? Number 2 is, by the way, sorry, siren, if you hear, it's New York City. So the second key area is targets and performances. Does the company have clear timelines for meeting their commitments? So, for example, if a company just implemented an animal welfare policy, do they have public, transparent information on when they will meet their commitment? So, if a company says by December 2023, we will take down our swim with dolphin attractions. Next is changing industry supply. Does the company take a leading role in promoting responsible animal welfare practices? So this all has to do with the industry. So the company, do they hold industry events, panels about animal-friendly tourism? And last but not least is changing consumer demand. Did the company raise awareness of animal welfare issues among its customers and provide advice on animal-friendly tourism? So for example, Airbnb has site content where they explain to consumers how to identify an elephant-friendly venue. So now that we know how companies were assessed, let's look at the results. Next slide, please. So let's start with the good guys. So these are companies with animal protection policies. We have Airbnb, Booking.com, Education First, Expedia, G Adventures, Intrepid, shout out to them, and the Travel Corporation. So all of these companies are leaders in the responsible wildlife tourism space. They're committed to protecting animals, and overall they had a good score from our Tracking the Travel Industry report. So they did well on the commitment, on the targets and performances, on changing industry supply and changing consumer demand. So all that being said, World Animal Protection encourages the public to book travel with these companies. By the companies doing the right thing and protecting animals, we want to support companies that are doing the right thing, and it also just feels good. So next slide, please. So now let's move on to those that have, say the least, room for improvement. So we have Get Your Guide, Groupon, Fluke, Trip.com, Musement, and TUI. So unfortunately, all of these companies in some form or another sell wildlife entertainment. That could be dolphin shows, elephant rides, tiger selfie opportunities, etc. So we have reached out to all of these 6 companies to discuss their animal welfare policy or lack of animal welfare policy. But as of today, there is no response. Some of you may know we have an active campaign on Groupon, but company leadership doesn't want to engage. Quick note that I forgot to say from the beginning, if you have questions during the presentation, please feel free to start putting them in the Q&A. We'll have Q&A at the end. Continuing with this slide. So this is where you all, the public, can make an impact and help animals. The slide before, we encourage you to support companies doing the right thing. And unfortunately, with this slide, it's the opposite. As travelers, we have the power to decide how we book our vacations and where we put our money. So by not supporting these companies, it sends a message to leadership that we find their business practice is unacceptable. So that's on tracking the travel industry. Next slide, please. So quickly, I wanted to go over how to find wildlife-friendly tours and activities, since this is a question we get often from supporters and the public seeking responsible animal tourism. Next slide. So this is our recommended wildlife-friendly travel certifications. The first is the Global Federation of Animal Sanctuaries. So this is an accreditation program where animals at the sanctuary receive the highest standards of care during rescue, rehabilitation, and the rest of their life. So on their website, you can explore over 200 sanctuaries around the world to visit. And we're going to be dropping a link in the chat where you can access all of these opportunities. The next 2 are whale heritage sites and whale sense. So these are 2 programs where you can look up responsible whale and dolphin watching tours. Whale heritage sites are global. They're sites all over the world. The one in the US is in Dana Point, California, which I highly recommend. I went there last year and it was amazing. And Whale Sense is US based. So they have a list of US based operators, which is also super helpful. Next is World Animal Protection's elephant-friendly guidelines. So on our website, we have a list of approved elephant sanctuaries in Thailand, Cambodia, Nepal, India, Laos, and Sri Lanka. And last but not least, it's our wildlife heritage areas. So this is a brand new program. It's still in development, but it's being led by World Animal Protection and World Cetacean Alliance. This program will highlight outstanding, responsible wildlife watching destinations. So stay tuned for more info since this is still a brand new program yet to release. Next slide, please. So before I go temporarily, just wanted to share a few things to keep in mind while you plan your animal-friendly vacation. Number 1, don't assume positive reviews mean the animals are treated well. So some years ago, researchers did a study where they analyzed thousands of reviews of wildlife venues on TripAdvisor, and 80% of people left positive reviews for venues that mistreated animals. So sometimes it's challenging to identify animal cruelty. So that's why we just make this note and to keep this in mind when doing your research. Number 2, many harmful wildlife venues misuse the term sanctuary to trick tourists. So the industry, wildlife entertainment industry, knows people don't want to support animal cruelty. So they use this word to confuse people into coming to their venue. So as mentioned before, checking the Global Federation of Animal Sanctuaries website is a great tool to help identify a good sanctuary. Number 3, a good rule of thumb is any experience where you could ride, touch, or feed an animal is animal cruelty. And last, when in doubt, refer to World Animal Protection's Guide to Animal-Friendly Travel, which will be on that link that my colleague Cameron is sharing in the chat. So next slide, please. So that's it for me. I'm very happy to present our next speaker. Dr. Susanne Etti is the Global Environmental Impact Manager of Intrepid Travel, the world's largest adventure travel company. She has a PhD in natural science, specializing in climate change and vector-borne disease. Her work at Intrepid Travel centers around global decarbonization. Susanne is an experienced leader in the areas of reporting, strategy, knowledge management, and sustainability with a focus on climate change. She is the author of a 10-step guide to decarbonize your travel business and the carbon measurement blueprint for tour operators, part of her ongoing commitment to lead the travel industry towards a more regenerative, healthy, inclusive, and sustainable 1.5-degree future. Welcome, Susanne. I'll let you take it over from here.
Thank you very much, Nicole. Next slide. Next. Good. Good morning. I'm joining you today from Melbourne on Australia. And before we get into today's session, I really want to pay respect to the knowledge embedded forever within the Aboriginal custodianship of country. Because for tens of thousands of years, First Nations people have managed the land and its inhabitants to ensure environmental harmony. So keeping balance in the environment is really central to First Nations ways of being, and we have so much to learn from them about maintaining this equilibrium. Next. So let me tell you a bit about Intrepid. We have traveled a long way to be here, and we're so glad we did. So since Intrepid's very humble beginnings in 1989, our founders have been passionate about creating positive change through the joy of travel and creating experience that benefit both people and the planet. In fact, their very first business plan included already donations to communities long before they were even making any money. Now, the world's largest adventure travel company, Intrepid offers over 1,000 trips across all 7 continents. Our network of over 25 destination management companies deliver innovative, immersive, and sustainable experience-rich travel experiences. And our not-for-profit, the Intrepid Foundation, and our commitment to the UN Sustainable Development Goals ensure that our words are never too far from our work. Next. Today's presentation will focus on ethical wildlife tourism, but truly to understand the complexities surrounding this, we need to look at it within the broader context of our natural world. At Intrepid, we recognize that we are in a global climate emergency, and as a tourism business, we have a front row seat to the crisis that is unfolding in so many iconic natural areas and destinations across the world. At the same time, before COVID hit, the sector contributed to 8% of global greenhouse gas emissions. So individually, but also collectively, as a global industry, we're all feeling the effects of the new extreme weather events. The increase in global average temperatures is already damaging the planet's ecosystem in ways that are harmful to biodiversity and dangerous to people. Next. And in fact, the reality is that this is no longer just a climate crisis, but it is a biodiversity crisis. Nature is a critical ally in the fight against climate change and nature loss. Evidence shows that strong and healthy ecosystem can really help to fight climate change, as well as build that resilience and help us to adapt to climate impacts. So for example, coastal and marine tourism is highly dependent on the quality of coastal and marine ecosystem and extremely vulnerable to the threats such as climate change and biodiversity loss. A healthy ocean is the foundation upon which the industry sector can thrive. Similarly, wildlife tourism is an extremely popular product, but is at risk of being compromised, not only by the exploitation industry, but also by the threat of climate change to Earth's most natural creatures and their habitats. So ensuring the long-term survival of species and ecosystems is critical to support the local communities and economies which rely on the tourism industry. And that's why in 2021, Intrepid signed the Get Nature Positive Pledge, which commits us to evaluating nature within the business agenda, continuously enhancing our understanding of nature-related business impacts, and identifying opportunities to take nature-positive action and share learnings with peers. Next. We're seeing nature-based tourism become one of the most popular forms of travel, particularly off the back of the pandemic and the growing keenness of customers to get outdoors again and experience the natural wonders of the world, including its creatures. This growing interest presents an opportunity for us to educate travelers in the importance of responsible tourism. Nature-based tourism offers the opportunity for tourists to see firsthand both wildlife and the conservation efforts of organizations and individuals to protect habitats and species. Next. At Intrepid, we believe that wild animals should be viewed with no contact or interaction, doing what they do best, living in the wild. Animals are an extremely important part of our natural ecosystem. We have an obligation to protect their habitats and ensure their longevity. That's why we have joined forces with organizations like World Animal Protection, who we have been working with over the past 12 years to design animal welfare guidelines, which guide our approach and provide others in the industry with a framework for responsible wildlife tourism. Intrepid's first major move was back in 2012, when we undertook an extensive research project in collaboration with World Animal Protection into the welfare of captive elephants. So from January 2014, we no longer offered elephant rides on any of our trips. Instead, we go to a limited number of places where elephant welfare is clearly highly prioritized, and the elephants are free to move without restraint for much of the day. More than 100 travel companies have since followed us. More recently, at the beginning of 23, we audited our 140 plus range of wildlife experiences and removed a number of suppliers that failed to meet our standard of ethical management. This included ending inclusion of Madagascar's Adasebe National Park experience, for example, due to enclosed animal living conditions for the sole purpose of travel and entertainment without a clear conservation intention. Next. Instead, we replaced this with 16 new and improved itineraries, which support conservation effort in some of the world's most vulnerable ecosystems and engage with the communities who are taking the action to protect the local species. This includes a brand new tour to the Comoros Islands of the east of Africa. The lesser known island nation was recently designated a UNESCO Biosphere Reserve, and it's home to some of the world's richest marine biodiversity. Another example is wildlife tour additions include a Victoria Falls Wildlife Trust experience between Vic Falls to Kruger that lifts the curtain on wildlife crime investigations while supporting critical anti-poaching efforts. Next. The Antarctic Treaty governs all activities on the continent, which means travel operations tend to be developed both directly and indirectly in the pursuit of peace and science. And this makes holidaying in Antarctica a truly different from a cruise anywhere else. We also know that travel brings people together and provides a glimpse into that fragile environments, extraordinary wildlife, and the threats facing these places. This shared understanding and that deeper respect for other people and places plays a crucial role in protecting our planet for the future. Intrepid has incorporated citizen science into our polar voyages, most notably in our partnership with the World Wildlife Fund on WWF Giants of Antarctica sailings. Alongside our regular team of Antarctica experts, we have the WWF Australia scientists join this tour to share insights into whale conservation as they conduct their cutting-edge research on these underwater giants. And this really allows also our travelers to work alongside these scientists to further their research into whales. Data collected on these trips, including by travelers, contributes directly to understanding of whale populations. Next. The Intrepid Foundation runs a number of partnerships designed to support animal conservation projects around the world. So, for example, we support the East African Wildlife Society, where people can enjoy the full diversity, beauty, and richness of nature. They set out to achieve this by various means, including projects that support anti-poaching initiatives that protect endangered wildlife within the reserves of Kenya. But as the population has grown, so too has poaching of endangered animals in the region. The Conservancy Ranger program aims at providing training and much needed equipment for rangers. Next. While many travel companies are starting to integrate more ethical and environmentally sustainable policies into their businesses, more needs to be done fast if we are going to secure the future of our natural world. No one actor in our supply chain can act in isolation. In addition to coordinated industry action, we need governments and policymakers to come to the table and commit to real legislative action. It is critical we all do what we can to understand, protect, and preserve the world's natural habitats, wildlife, and environment for future generations. Protecting key ecosystems, sustainable livelihood, biodiversity, and climate change has never been more important. Next. Thank you very much. And I'll hand over back to Nicole.
Thanks so much, Susanne. So next we have Kelley Louise. Next slide, Mackenzie. So to introduce Kelley, a travel entrepreneur passionate about storytelling and sustainability, Kelley is the founder of Impact Travel Alliance, the world's largest community for socially and eco-conscious travelers. She is also the head of marketing at Fora, a new startup that empowers anyone to transform their passion for travel into meaningful revenue by becoming a travel advisor. A leader in sustainable tourism, Kelley has served as one of 30 global leaders on the World Economic Forum's Global Future Council on Sustainable Travel. She has been noted as one of the top 100 female founders by Travel Massive. Welcome, Kelley. I'll let you take it from here. Oh, you're on mute.
You would think I would have figured that out after so many Zoom webinars at this stage. I said thank you. So thank you for the reminder to go off mute as well. You can go ahead and hit over to the next slide, Mackenzie, and the next one as well. And this is actually a little video. I don't know if that's going to play, but could we try? So this was an experience. I was fortunate to be in Kauai earlier this year, and this was like a very magical and serendipitous experience that I had when I was on a tour of the coastline with a company called Makana Charters, and they are a native-owned company that takes you on a tour of the Nepali coast, which is here on the left. It's gorgeous. This is an unfiltered iPhone photo. It's just as pretty as that, if not even more so in real life. And this was a great experience to see dolphins in their natural habitats on their own terms as well, and just really witness the magic of nature firsthand. And I think that that's what's really powerful about the intersection of travel and the opportunity to protect wildlife, is it gives us the opportunity to become advocates to protect it. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So travel has the power to change our world, but so often the messaging around sustainable travel is difficult to understand, and it's ridden with greenwashing. As Nicole mentioned, there's a lot of sanctuaries out there that label themselves as sanctuaries, and they're not actually sanctuaries. So it's very misleading and hard to find something that you know is sustainable and book that in confidence that we're having a positive impact on the world. On top of that, as travelers, we're so often told what not to do, which isn't very inspiring. It's really important to know core concepts, like not to ride an elephant or not to have monkeys for photo opportunities or things like that. And it's very important, to Nicole's point, to have those guidelines. But from the B2B perspective, when we're having conversations amongst tour operators and suppliers, those should be in place to make those policy changes. But then the narrative needs to shift a little bit when we're speaking directly to travelers, because I think that it's really hard when you're a traveler, and oftentimes when you're participating in these experiences, you're not riding an elephant because you hate elephants. You're riding an elephant because you're trying to connect with nature and the world around you, and you didn't know that that was something that was harmful to that elephant. So I always think of opportunities to try to flip that narrative, because there are so many things that we can do to connect with the world around us. And so it's important to kind of have both opportunities at the same time. Yes, we need to have guidelines that really frame, here's what's important to be able to protect animals, but we also need to say, here's all of the opportunities that we do have in which we can have an incredible vacation. Next slide, please. We can go ahead and skip this one since I got the introduction. So as a quick introduction on Impact Travel Alliance, we are the world's largest community for socially and eco-conscious travelers. Impact Travel Alliance is an independent nonprofit, which I think is really important. I'm not sitting here trying to sell a brand or an experience to you. I represent a global community of conscious travelers who are advocating for a better world through travel. So we produce educational content ranging from online articles to in-person meetups that are really designed to help you find and connect with fellow conscious travelers, but then also learn more about sustainable travel. Next slide, please. So just a quick step back before diving into a few examples that are specifically related to wildlife tourism. I think it's really important to define what sustainable travel is. There's a lot of misconceptions around it, and there's a lot of different types of language that can oftentimes be really confusing to travelers, again, when you're trying to book something that has a positive impact on the world. So don't get too caught up in the language and trying to figure out what's the difference between responsible travel versus regenerative travel versus sustainable travel. Really just focus on how you can explore in a way that has a positive impact on locals and our environment. At the end of the day, and a nod to Susanne and Intrepid, I think that this is what they do really well. It's just better travel. It's going to be better for you as the traveler. It's going to be a more immersive experience. And then it's also going to support locals and the planet as well. There's a lot of intersections here. And so it's not just about focusing on one component of what sustainability looks like. It's looking at the big picture through a holistic lens and thinking about how all of this is interconnected and works and plays off of one another. And when you apply this to ethical experiences with wildlife, you can truly look at that through the lens of opportunities for us to connect deeper with nature and our surroundings. And what's really powerful behind that is it allows you to become an advocate to protect the world around you. Next slide, please. So I wanted to share a couple of examples of some really great ethical wildlife experiences around the world, because we talk so much about what you can or you can't do, but it's sometimes really nice just to take a step back and apply it to tangible experiences so that you have examples to apply that to when you're thinking about booking your own trips. The first is Allendale Wilderness Lodge. This is in Scotland. This is not a cat on the far end. This is actually a Scottish wildcat. And these Scottish wildcats actually neared extinction because of humans coming into Scotland and overdeveloping the area. And Allendale Wilderness Lodge is a great place that you can visit that is really focused on regenerative travel and making sure that they're leaving the land in a better position than when they took ownership over that property. And one of the initiatives that they have is a refuge for these Scottish wildcats, and they're working to help to reintroduce them in a way that is better for having them back into that land and that nature that surrounds them. The second, and I'm going to try to smash a couple of stereotypes around sustainability and thinking about how we can apply these to any type of travel experience. This one is with Hurtigruten Expeditions. So oftentimes when you hear sustainable travel, cruising isn't the thing that comes to mind, but Hurtigruten is a really great company. They're Norwegian. They've been around for more than 100 years, and they have a deep commitment to our environment. And one of the things that I really love about them is that they have a core focus on environmental stewardship and making sure that they are exploring the world in a way that doesn't have a negative impact on it. So they've actually committed, from a climate crisis standpoint, they've committed to having fuel-free ships by 2030. And that's ambitious. It's soon, it's right around the corner. You can currently go on a trip with them right now and get on a ship that is a hybrid powered ship. I always joke and call this, it's kind of like the Prius of the seas, but it's a beautiful ship. I've been fortunate to be on it myself. And they have a several great experiences all around the world, but I wanted to highlight the one in the Galapagos. And this is an opportunity to connect with the wildlife there. All of their ships focus on explorations through science. So they have a science center on their ship. You can participate in citizen science programs. You can, when I was on the cruise with them, we had bird feathers underneath microscopes to be able to really see, like, this is the anatomy of a bird feather and how different birds can fly in different ways based on how that is all put together. And then the last example I have here is from New York City, which is where I am joining from today. And shout out to bees. I am a nerd. I love bees. Fun fact, they are responsible for 1/3 of the food on your plate. So bees are just a powerhouse of energy and really cool things that they do for our environment. And this was actually an event that we did with Impact Travel Alliance with our local chapter here in the city. And we had a visit to the Queen's Botanical Gardens and learned about their beekeeping initiatives and more about what they are doing to help protect honeybees. And I think that this is a really great example of how you can embrace ethical wildlife and urban sustainability in a way that's not something that comes to mind immediately right off the bat when you're thinking about sustainable tourism. Next slide, please. So in closing, I have just a couple of tips that are key takeaways. Here's one last little example. Shout out to Global Family Travels. They had a great experience in Zimbabwe. This is a painted dog. It's one of the most endangered wildlife species in Africa. And you can go on a safari to be able to visit them. So again, all of those experiences, being able to connect deeper with the world around us, I think that gives us something that is a tangible experience where we're able to not just hear daunting news about the climate crisis or everything that's going wrong in the world. It's an empowering, inspiring experience that allows us to become an advocate to turn around and protect our world. So a couple of tips for travelers. Number one, do your research. The industry is ridden with greenwashing, so don't just trust what a marketer is telling you about a specific product or experience. Number two, book with companies that keep wildlife wild. So don't look for opportunities that are keeping wildlife in captivity. Look for them that have wildlife that you can experience it and encounter it out in the wild. It's also more fun that way, in my opinion. You don't want to go and see something in a cage and kind of feel bad for that creature that you're seeing and that's caged up. And instead, you have the opportunity to see them in their own natural environment, which is a much better experience for you as the traveler. Number three, support programs that partner with conservationists and scientists. You're going to also learn more when you do this. It's really cool to be a part of that experience and have a scientist explaining something to you and really understanding what you would oftentimes read in a textbook and see it there in real life with them. Book small tours. These are typically the most environmentally sustainable as well. You're also going to have a more intimate experience. You don't want to be on a safari with 100 other people around you. You want to be in a very intimate experience, and that's going to have less disruption for those animals that you are encountering. Consider the company's main goals. So what are they really trying to do? Are they kind of churning you in and out just on a kind of an assembly line of travelers, or do they have the wildlife's greater interest in mind? And then last but not least, travel with companies that promote nature's beautiful surprises. This is my favorite part about encountering wildlife. You can't predict it. If there's a company that's guaranteeing that you're going to see something's fishy there's something that's off, look for ones that say this is what we're going to seek out, but they can't promise that you're going to see a rhino when you're on a ride, or they can't promise that you're going to see a sea turtle when you're scuba diving somewhere. But that makes that moment all the more special when you do encounter it in the wild, because that is part of what makes nature so special. That's all from my end. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Kelley. So we are going to move into the Q&A portion of the webinar. So just to quickly highlight what we all spoke about. So we presented 3 ways for the public to help the animals through travel. So first, book your travel with companies that have animal protection policies. 2, Intrepid Travel is a great example of a company you can take a wildlife tour with. And 3rd, Impact Travel Alliance is a great community to connect with other like-minded people and to get involved with their chapters. So moving on to Q&A, I'm gonna open the Q&A box, but I see we have a question for Susanne that I believe came in during her presentation. So Susanne from Mia, there's a growing belief that in order to truly protect fragile environments like the Arctic, it would be far more responsible to stop traveling to such places, or to at least reduce the amount of travel there is in interest of protecting the planet and wildlife. What do you think about this idea?
Yeah, no, really good question. And I might just refer back to the governance that we see in Antarctica, which really focus on volume, value over volume, a commitment to using tourism in the pursuit of peace and science. And that's unlikely anything we have seen in any other cruise destination around the world. So much of that approach to tourism in Antarctica can really provide a baseline for more responsible cruise industry worldwide. So taking our example, like Intrepid is committed has science-based decarbonization targets, and that means that we are measuring our impact, including on our Antarctica voyages. And that's really what I'm really advocating, and too, is like that for the industry overall in the cruise industry is really to focus on understanding your impact and measuring your emissions, because once you start measuring, that's only when you really can understand where your impact is and where you can meaningful decarbonize. The other example that I shared earlier on is the citizen science aspect. You do have like the example that also Kelley shared with Certicurrent. It's an amazing opportunity to have companies partner with organizations like WWF, the Great Giants, to provide citizen science to customers on the tour, because that really improves the understanding of what's happening locally, the impact to the environment, and especially to wildlife. So what we're seeing in Antarctica is definitely a really great model, especially around the governance, that I would love to see elsewhere implemented too.
Great, thanks, Susanne. We have a question for Diana, and I'll ask Kelley. What do panelists think about photography tourism experiences? How does excessive photography impact animals in their habitats?
Yeah, I think as a whole, I'd say I think they're great in terms of having a souvenir where you're just taking photos, you're not taking anything else. And that's something, again, you can turn around and share that. I have a photo that I took on my cell phone like 10 plus years ago at this stage that I still show people all the time, of a mother gorilla that I saw when I was gorilla trekking in Zimbabwe. And that was such a powerful experience for me. And so being able to have that souvenir with you is very important and impactful to have. But the flip side of that is also making sure that you are participating in an ethical animal experience. And so that goes back to researching the companies that you're booking with and the power of a reputable company and a knowledgeable guide. So when you're with someone, especially, again, I love going on tours with scientists. I think that that's such a great experience to learn something about our world, not from a textbook, but from actually seeing that encounter in the real world. And what they can actually do is help to guide you through that experience to make sure that you're being as minimally disruptive to the animal as possible. So that means not getting too close, not taking too many pictures, that they're hearing a lot of shutters going off and really getting frightened from that. It might mean not using your flash. I had an experience in Costa Rica, and we went and saw sea turtles laying their eggs, and they had red lights that they use because of the way that the turtles light, their eyes interact with lights, and it confuses them when they see a white light. And so they specifically tell you before you even get into the area, you can take pictures, but take them on your cell phone, and they'll use the red light to shine on it to be minimally disruptive to that turtle. So again, really kind of, you don't have to know everything going into that experience. It's not like you're trekking out into the wildlife on your own, hoping to get a good photo of a gorilla. You have a guide there with you. So really work to book with a company that you trust and that can help guide you so that you are able to get that really incredible photo and bring it back to your community and your friends and family and talk about that experience in a way that you know was not harmful to that creature.
Thank you, Kelley. So I have a question here from William, who recently returned from Hilton in Hawaii. And I know this venue, they have dolphins on site. So William says that they had 7 dolphins in a pool connected to the ocean, but they don't have access to it. Advertisements promoted all the good they were doing with education, etc. What can we do to put pressure directly on Hilton and those like them to change their policies? So yes, in situations like this, if we encourage supporters to send their messages on social media. So all of these venues have their brand image, they have their social media profiles. So we encourage you all to just give your opinion under their social media posts, call out these dolphins that they have on their sites. And I've seen photos of the venue. The pools are very small and it's very unfortunate. So definitely encourage social media and sending an email to the managers of the hotel because these issues are on their radar. They know that there is a population that is not satisfied with what's going on, rightfully so. It's not ethical. So use your voice as much as possible and it will make a difference.
Nicole, could I add a little bit to that? And Mackenzie, could I actually ask you to go backwards in the slides? Susanne had a really great slide toward the end of hers that talked about how everyone can make and take action. If you could,
Just
it's like towards
one.
Yes.
Yeah, that one.
This one. I really, really like this, Susanne, because I don't think that there's a silver bullet solution that's going to fix all of the problems that we have. And everyone has to kind of come at this from a different perspective of the role that we have to play in the world. And one thing that is interesting about this panel, Nicole coming from this space of you all are working to create guidelines and really promote ethical standards to be applied across the industry. Susanne comes from Intrepid, which is a brand that has really embodied and practiced those guidelines and then can take that and offer those opportunities to travelers. And then I'm coming from a space of an educational nonprofit that kind of takes all of that and then translates it into messaging that travelers can truly apply to the experiences that they're participating in. So no matter where you're coming from, I think that there's different levels of how you can apply it from both your professional and personal life and really make an impact there. And at the end of the day, travelers control the industry. Brands will stop doing stuff if you stop purchasing these experiences from them. And so being able to, as Nicole says, reach out, advocate against it, your purchase power matters, and that's going to dictate what drives their business, because if they don't have revenue coming in, then they're not going to be able to maintain their business. So it's about this ongoing communication of how can we educate ourselves, how can we learn more. Again, I don't think that people are riding elephants or swimming with dolphins because they don't like the creatures. So it's this education that we really need to push and get out there, and then work together to be able to enact change across the industry.
And Nicole, it's okay if I just add something?
Of course, I'm loving this. Please
go. Just building on both of your points, it's also kind of how we work with our suppliers. So we have actually during the pandemic open sourced an animal welfare toolkit, and that was done in collaboration again with World Animal Protection. But this is also really taking the business perspective and how we're working with our suppliers, because we have all business has that very rich supply chain, and how can you really engage your suppliers to take that first step and improve their processes in setting up a policy, etc. So that's also for those on the call that are actually in the business space. It's kind of like this document is free to download from our website, is kind of how to engage others to kind of really start their journey. So really encourage you to have a look if you like, and then also where business might not be up for scratch yet, it's really to have also that conversation, like what about the processes that you can do. So again, coming back to Kelley's point, it is really around everyone has a role to play, the consumer, but then also how we are engaging our suppliers and pushing the bar and kind of pushing for better processes and governance and policies.
Great, thanks, Susanne. I actually have a question for you because I know this term popped up and I've been hearing about it as well. And Kelley, feel free to pitch in as well. So the question is, what is regenerative tourism and how is the concept relevant to animal welfare?
Yeah, I mean, good one. Yeah, so it's definitely coming up more. So the idea of regeneration or the renewing or restoring of something is indeed actually not so new, but it's only been really in the last few years that regeneration in sectors ranging, actually also from agriculture, even through to architecture, has really entered the mainstream conversation. So has it done here in the tourism sector. So the recognition that the economic engine of tourism as is currently practiced is unsustainable is slowly entering more and more mainstream awareness in times of such rapid and radical changes that we're seeing really on every front. Like I touched on the environment, climate change and biodiversity, but also it's about economy, politics, society, and even technology. The tourism is providing far more vulnerable than many wanted to admit, especially before the pandemic, as we have seen during that time. And someone that I was very fortunate actually in the past few weeks to meet here back in Melbourne is a person that I very much admire, is Anna Pollock, who's the founder of Conscious Travel and has probably thought more than anyone else about how to understand and deliver regenerative tourism. And she says it helps to see it not as a noun, but more as a verb. And that regeneration is really that constant coming into being that is life, and the endless cycling of renewal that is nature. And the essence of regenerative is that it is actually regenerating. So aspect of regenerative tourism include really that measuring tourism beyond its financial benefits. And that's really focusing on local people and considering that holistic well-being. And that's the people, the wildlife, the communities, and the planet. And we as people working within the tourism industry and as compassionate members of humanity must really strive for that healthier, more equitable future. And the only way to get there is really through that regeneration concept.
I have thoughts too, if you don't mind, Nicole. Thank you. So seconding everything that Susanne said, I love that. Also, I will second Anna's work is phenomenal. So I highly recommend deeper dives around all of this. And one example that I actually shared in my presentation is from Allendale Wilderness Lodge. And as I mentioned, I alluded to that they're regenerative. And so they're actually reintroducing species back into the Scottish wildlife area that they have a huge piece of land, and their goal is to rewild that area. So looking for opportunities that go beyond just minimizing your impact, but truly create a better space for the destination that you're visiting. And my little asterisk on that and like hot take on this topic is that I do think that within the industry, we talk a lot about the differences between regenerative travel or sustainable travel or these different types about it. And at the end of the day, it's kind of splitting hairs. There's very subtle differences between each of them. And I also think that it makes it difficult when you're a traveler to weed between all of these different types of experiences, again, especially when you add greenwashing on top of that. And so if you really just want to take a step back and simplify it and think about your role as a traveler is to explore in a way that has a positive impact on locals and the environment that the environment of the destination that you're visiting, then you have an opportunity to change the world through every single type of travel experience that you're visiting, that you are fortunate enough to visit. So that ranges from your travel style to your budget, to where you're going. There's an opportunity for impact throughout each of those different types of experiences. And when we expand the definition, I think instead of looking at it as here's this or that, or ecotourism, or these different things, then we have the opportunity to mainstream positive impact within sustainable travel. And that's when we have the ability to truly move the needle toward an industry that can change the world through travel. So yes, it's important. I love like the academic analysis behind it. And there's a lot of great work that's being done in this space. But I also think as much as it's important to do deep dives on this and really understand the nuances and the differences between these different categories, it's also often a small part of the industry when we start to say, here's sustainable tourism, or here's ecotourism, or here's regenerative travel, but all of that can be applied to the entire industry. And that's when it becomes really powerful and exciting, because any traveler can participate in those experiences, no matter their travel style, budget, or destination.
Thanks so much, Kelley. I'm gonna take one or two more questions. And I see a question here for Susanne from Edwina. I have always thought that Intrepid focused on active vacations for young people. Do you have any tours that work for older people who want to support sustainable travel that helps protect animals?
It's a really good question. Yeah, it's open to all ages. So I think Antarctica is a really good example with the citizen science, that it is really, that's not about being super active, like yes, active, but like it's really supporting the scientists on the ocean endeavor. So there are many examples of wildlife experience that are kind of embedded into our different products. We have definitely seen now after the pandemic a much bigger demand of this nature-based tourism across the different age groups, and ranging also an activity level, but definitely that connecting to nature, I think that's really is important to all age groups, and there's the interest. So yeah, I really encourage you, just jump onto intrepid.com, our website, and explore the area around wildlife experience, or just generally the product that we have that connects you to nature.
Thanks, Susanne. And Kelley, I just had a question myself about the chapters here in the US, since this is a predominantly US audiences. How many chapters are there in the US? Are there in major? I know there's one here in New York. Can you speak more on that for folks to get involved?
Yes, I actually skipped over a slide unintentionally. Leave it to me to leave out the shameless self-promo, but I think we can skip back over to it. Here's our global community. We launched originally in 2015, and we've hosted more than 700 meetups since then. Our content as a whole, again, I mentioned, we produce educational content that is designed to empower you to have a positive impact on the world through travel. And that content ranges from articles that are on our website to in-person meetups. And those are immersive experiences like the Queen's Botanical Garden one that I mentioned here in New York City. So we have a wide range of different chapters all over the world, about 30,000 members in our community as a whole.
Amazing. I'm looking forward to joining one myself soon. Great. So I think that's all the time we have. If we can skip to the last slide. So thank you everyone for joining. I know the question popped up about the recording, so everyone who registered will receive the recording of the webinar afterwards. These are our links to all of our company sites. Cameron is helping me add the links, so please visit Intrepid's website, visit Impact Travel Alliance's website, and of course, World Animal Protection's website. And stay tuned for our next event on wildlife tourism. Thank you all for joining, and have a good rest of your day, afternoon, and evening.